You have been doing a lot of research about the electoral system comparison all over the world. Your country, the United States, had just had a very dramatic election. What do you make of how the system was being established vis-a-vis the result of elections, particularly for, let's just say, from the US?
Well, unfortunately, the US uses what I consider to be a very bad election system, both in primaries and in the general election. They use what is called plurality rule, which means that each voter votes for a single candidate, and the candidate who has the most votes wins, even if that's short of a majority, even if it's short of 50%, which it often is. And it was this system that allowed Donald Trump to get the nomination of the Republican Party, because when he began his campaign, there were 16 other Republican candidates. The anti-Trump vote would overwhelm the pro-Trump vote. At least that was the prediction before the primaries. But what happened was that the anti-Trump vote got split over these 16 candidates, and so none of them was able to effectively challenge Trump.
But let's move on from the primary to the general election. Of course, that is not just the one who is getting most of the vote, but rather two at the same time, parallel. One is the popular vote, the other is the electoral vote.
The Electoral College system was created in the late 18th century at a time when most voters didn't even know who the presidential candidates were, because these candidates were far away. Voters did know political figures in their own state. And so the idea was that rather than voting directly for president, they would vote for electors, and the electors would choose the president. That was the theory behind the Electoral College, that the candidates themselves were not well enough known to have a direct popular vote. But of course, these days, everybody knows who the presidential candidates are, and so the rationale for the Electoral College system is completely gone. I think at this point, most of the public understands that a discrepancy between the national popular vote and the Electoral College vote is not a good thing.
What kind of soul searching do you, the most shining, I would say, among all the intellectuals inside the United States, have about the election itself, where America is?
The United States is a country which is strong enough so that no matter who is in power at any particular time, it's probably going to do pretty well. Historically, Americans have been suspicious of government and have wanted to do things on their own. And that's a source of strength, and I think it's been a source of America's success. The fact that government, although I think it's played a role, has not been the overwhelming force in the American success story. That being said, the outcome of this most recent election it was very upsetting to many of us, because the president-elect seems to be so explicitly rejecting many American values. He talked about bringing a religious test to which immigrants were allowed in the country. He
Yeah, we all
talked,
understand his rhetorics. Yeah.
yeah, his rhetoric, I would say, is anti-American. It's also anti-knowledge, anti-science. He's questions the reality of climate change, for example, which we know from the scientific community is not really in doubt anymore. When you have a person in such power saying these things, it's troubling.